Are these tutorials doing it wrong? Let's talk about that. Recently, I was watching some painting tutorials on YouTube and I got to thinking, are some of these painting tutorials doing it right? Well, I mean, let's be real. There's no real wrong way to do a painting tutorial, but I have identified a few things that I think improve certain painting tutorials versus other ones. Some that I find do too many steps. There's a list of 3. We're going to do 3 today. So let's just go ahead and let's get started. Number 1, completing parts of the model before others. Now, this one in particular came from a Warhammer one, specifically a Games Workshop tutorial that was painting Dreki Flint, who is a Kharadron Overlord's hero character in Age of Sigmar. And I was watching the painting tutorial on YouTube, and I couldn't help but notice that what the painter was doing was he was finishing certain parts of the model before others. And the reason this was problematic is because he was doing it in an interesting order. He did the entirety of the armor, which included shoulders, arm braces, leg braces, like all these armor plates, and then he had to do another step that was closer to the face or to the arm, or like he was painting the metallics. He's like, well, the metallics were so late into the steps that I'm like, this is way too easy for this to spill onto other things. And don't get me wrong, you can always go back and clean up a spot with your original previous paint before, but we've all been in that situation where you've got that perfect blend on that miniature and then you accidentally spilled something on there. You try and wash it off really quickly, and then you try and clean it up with that paint, and it's just different. You messed up you had a perfect blend before, and now you got to do it again. In good practice, but as a whole, as a painting tutorial, I think it's a little bit more difficult for people who are getting into this for the first time and are looking at a painting tutorial to get more information. Tip number 2. I find that there are some painting tutorials that just have a few too many steps. Now, what does that mean? Now, obviously, I do painting tutorials myself, so this can also be self-criticism. Go ahead and check them out. Let me know if you like them or don't like them. Like, share, subscribe, do whatever you feel like. Thumbs up. But there was one painting tutorial I saw that was for a Night Lord, and it involved using medium and some contrast. I won't specifically state which one, but I couldn't help but notice that painting this miniature had a lot of steps, and I would argue unnecessary steps. It was adding the medium to dilute the paint so that it washed over, and then you had to paint another pattern, then you had to do another glaze over that, and then you had to do it again. And you're doing this on a Night Lord specifically, where you have multiple panels blocked in by gold trim. The gold trim alone is going to take you a very long time, so I mean, it's already going to be time consuming. But I think to myself, there's gotta be a faster, better way to achieve this kind of result. Now, I could be wrong, and this could be the only one way to do it, but in particular, this was something that stuck out to me, and I think that it's something when it comes to painting tutorials. I mean, obviously, you're just showing your process to how you got to something, because someone may have asked, hey, how did you accomplish this blue, or what color did you use for this, and stuff like that. But when we're doing painting tutorials, I feel like they kind of need to be just a little more condensed down to make them a little bit more consumable, and also just to allow you to get to that result with a little less work. I mean, especially if someone's going to that video and with the idea of painting that entire army, and those are the steps that it took to get through that one miniature, that army is gonna take literally forever. But again, it's not a huge problem. It's just a point of criticism that I think should be addressed somewhere.
Today's video is sponsored by The Forge for all your hobby nerd needs. Whether it's Warhammer 40k, Age of Sigmar, Marvel Crisis Protocol, Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Lorcana, and a plethora of board games, The Forge has what you need. The Forge has been my go-to shop, and the inventory has only grown. If there's something you don't see on the shelves, fill out a product request form on their website. Thank you to The Forge for sponsoring this video.
Last but not least, length. For number 3. There are some painting tutorials, this kind of goes hand in hand with number 2, unnecessary steps. I think there are some painting tutorials that show you the entirety of the process. That can be very beneficial. That can be very cool. There are some where I watch the entirety of the process, but I would say that the entirety of the process is still kind of clipped and trimmed. Painters like Jose da Vinci, he does a really good job showing a comprehensive shot of how he paints something and the colors and everything else like that, but it's still trimmed. Like, he still trims a lot of the steps, and there are some painting tutorials that I've seen out there that are like 50 minutes, and that's good if you're trying to show the entirety of the process, but sometimes I think it's a little bit on the long side, and again, sometimes I think ends up accidentally falling into that too many steps sort of situation, because there'll be someone who's like, yeah, so you prime it black, and then you do, this zenithal, and then you do this contrast, and once you do this, then you paint over it with this layer paint. And it's not utilizing the contrast, and the contrast kind of defeats itself. It's not being used for the shade. Like, the person is literally filling in the entirety of this panel or something like that. I think it's something that does stand out. I think it's something worth pointing out. Again, all of this is subjective. This is just my own personal opinion. I do look up a lot of painting tutorials because I like to see how people accomplish certain things, because then it kind of informs me how I want to perform my thing. Like, for example, painting up my Usharan. I looked at a lot of the different reference tutorial videos that were out there for him, and I wanted to find one that was going to get the right skin tone. There were some that went a little too pale on his fingers when they were doing like the shading on that. There were some that went to like dark green on like his arms and his face and stuff like that. So it took a bit of trial and error in terms of looking up these painting tutorials to find out which ones had the steps that I was going to use and which ones I wasn't going to use, or which one I was really just going to draw inspiration from. But again, as point number 3 is pointed out, if the video's 50 minutes to like an hour and 10 minutes and it's just kind of dry, it's going to be really hard for anyone to go through that painting tutorial to find that useful information that they're looking for, versus, just skipping ahead to like, all right, let's try minute 20. Nope, they're still not at the armor. All right, let's try minute 30. Oh, nope, still not at the armor. And it just makes it a little bit more difficult. If they do chapters, it makes it a little better, but it's just a personal thought, personal point criticism. Alright, and those are my 3 criticisms for painting tutorials. Criticisms, observations, call it whatever you want. I just wanted to keep it nice and short today. It's something that just occurred to me because I was actually looking at some painting tutorials. It's all actually kind of kicked off from the first example of the Dreki Flint model, because I do plan on painting up Dreki Flint because I think he's a really cool character. I actually really hope he keeps his rules for 4th edition where he can just steal artifacts from people. You just go up close, you roll a dice, and you just steal their device, like you steal their artifact from them. That's just good fun. I don't care what anyone says. But of course, if you like the content, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Of course, I have all my socials linked down in the description down below. And of course, comment. Let me know what your thoughts are. Do you agree with some of the criticism? Do you disagree? Just give me some feedback. But until next time, I've been Tattoo Tabletop. Go paint something.